Hey everybody, I'm Alex Big Blue, and today I'm going to be doing my top 10 Marvel women. So I'll be telling you guys my favorite Marvel women, all 10 of them ranked from 10 to 1. So let's go ahead and get right into it with number 10, Spider-Woman Julia Carpenter. So Spider-Woman Julia Carpenter specifically has always been a character since I learned about her in the comics that I liked a lot. I remember she was in a few stories, I think, early on where I first met her in the background, kind of. But I've always thought she has a just really cool costume. I really like it a lot. One of my favorite female costumes, actually, in comics. And I also think she's just a very super likable character. She has a lot of layers to her. She also has a daughter in a lot of the comics that I'm reading. So the fact that she has a kid to watch out for is kind of a relatable and interesting aspect to her character as well. And I just think she makes a great member to any Avengers team or any other ones like Force Works that she's on. At number 9, Jubilee. Jubilee is a character that I've always liked a lot ever since the early 90s X-Men show, which I watched as a little kid at that point. But yeah, I've always loved that show and I watched it throughout. And that's what introduced me to Jubilee, like I said. And I think she's a very relatable and kind of youthful character to start with. That's the way she's introduced, at least. Being a teenager who's a lot younger than all the other X-Men of that lineup at the time. I believe in the comics too, but especially in the show as well. And I've always really liked her powers. I think it's really cool to shoot fireworks. I mean, it's pretty awesome. It's unique too. I don't really know of any other ones. If there is other ones that does that, I can't think of one off the top of my head even. As big of a nerd as I am. So, but yeah, I've always liked her powers, and I like her a lot as a person. She seems really cool as a character in general. And I love her outfit too. I think it's always iconic. It stands out in my mind of that particular costume she wears on the show and in the comics as well. At number 8, Silhouette. I'm a huge New Warriors fan. I've read that series a lot recently, and one of the reasons I like it so much is Silhouette. She's definitely one of my favorites. Her power set, where she can phase through anything in the like with the shadow powers, is extremely cool and also useful. And I think the fact that she's also like handicapped, like her legs are, like not normal. Basically, they're damaged in some way. I forget exactly what the reason was for that. I think it tells, but I think the fact that she uses the crutches and all of that stuff too is another layer to her that makes her really just, I don't know, like really cool. You know what I mean? Like I really like that a lot about her. I think also her personality is really great, and the fact that she's also a pretty good leader in a pinch or when they have to do that. Whenever she's a leader, she does well, and I think she's a great member of a team, and specifically the New Warriors. At number 7, Psylocke. I think Psylocke is one of the just like pure coolest characters, if I had to just say exact reason to start with. And I think everything from her look as a character, her costume, her powers, which with the awesome pink aura that comes out, with her kinetic knives and all of that stuff. She's a great telepath. I also like that a lot about her. And she has a fascinating and kind of crazy backstory. And she's a great member of the X-Men in general. And I think she's just a really cool and likable character in general. But I really think she's interesting. That's the main reason. Number 6, Shadowcat. I think Kitty Pryde is a really relatable member of the X-Men. She feels a lot like a real person, kind of, compared to other characters, I would say. And I've always really found her when she was younger and also when she got a little older, both to be very endearing and very likable in general. And I think her powers, where she phases through stuff and the way she starts to master those more as time goes along, is very awesome. And I also think, in general, her and her relationships with, like, Colossus, for example, and her feelings, where she's outspoken and the way she does things about those, is always also very interesting. And I just find her to be very fascinating as a character in general. Number 5, Namorita. So she is a character that shot way up the charts for me recently. She, speaking of the New Warriors love, she is my favorite New Warrior probably right now, if I had to say. And she's kind of the epitome of a strong female character that's done right, in my opinion. And I really like her personality, which is outspoken, but also very caring. Like, Like she has aspects of kind of each thing that's realistic. And she's also very powerful. She's also a very good team member and supportive of other characters. Her relationships are interesting with Nova, for example, early on, as well as others. And the fact that her family lineage is also pretty interesting, where she's, of course, very closely kin to Namor. But yeah, she's a very fascinating character that I wish they would do more with. Number 4, Jean Grey, aka Marvel Girl, aka the Phoenix at times. Well, first of all, she's an extremely powerful character, which automatically makes her interesting in that way, regardless. So I'll start with that. But even besides the Phoenix Force, which she has a lot of times, which is great story arcs and stuff, I think her powers in general, where she's an extremely powerful telepath and also has telekinesis as well. I think she's a very cool character, and her relationship with Scott, aka Cyclops, is one of the better relationships, if not my favorite, in comic books as well. And they always have to deal with tragedy and turmoil and stuff. And I think the feelings and things that they have to deal with and the grief has always been very interesting and very realistic. And I think that makes Jean Grey very compelling. I also think in general she's a really likable character and a great team member and team leader when called upon to do so. But Jean Grey's always been a great character and definitely one of my favorites. At number 3, Scarlet Witch. So Scarlet Witch has always been a character ever since pretty much I learned about her early on in the really early 90s. I remember seeing her in some comic panels and I was like, wow, she looks really cool. I want to get to know that character. And so eventually I started reading stuff with her in it when I got the chance. I got a little bit older. Ever since then, I've loved her character, whether she be generally like a hero, which usually is, or kind of a villain, or I mean, is a villain or anti-villain, or however you look at it, in a few story arcs, or specifically that one. But I think her power set, her kind of mental issues that she has to deal with because of the way things happen, and also maybe her powers in general, her relationships with other characters, and also her extremely awesome costume, which is, you know, the kind of one you're thinking of. I'll show it right here, but that costume is one of the most iconic, I think, in all of comics for a woman character, especially not be one of the most famous ones, arguably, ever, like Wonder Woman or something. But I really love Scarlet Witch. I think Wanda is a very cool character. I've always liked her a lot. Her powers are interesting and different, too, even with just the luck aspect of them, besides all the insane OP stuff. But yeah, she's a great character, and I really dig her and like to read anything with her in it. Number 2, my favorite current female X-Men member, which is Rogue. So, Rogue has always been way up there on my favorite characters list, especially for the women of the X-Men, because I've always liked a bunch of them, but she's always been one of my favorites, and she is my favorite of them right now. For a litany of reasons, really, I would say her powers are extremely interesting, maybe one of the better power sets and kind of problems that comes from those in comics in general. I find that fascinating. I know I said before, like, her touch is kind of almost reminds me of like a vampire, where she, you know, she can't really touch other people, or else she gets her powers and all that stuff and basically kills them, or can if she don't watch. So that's a very unique thing to have to deal with, which makes her interesting automatically to me. Also, her hairstyle, where it's always those two colors, is great. I like that aspect. I also really like her yellow and green costume, and the other ones as well, for that matter. But Rogue is super powerful and very compelling and very interesting. Just really everything about her and her relationship with Gambit, and also her personality, just all top-notch stuff, and I've always really liked her a lot as a character. And at number 1, the Invisible Woman. So Susan Storm has always been a character that I liked a lot, and in recent years, I've really found out how much I liked her compared to some others. She is my favorite member of the Fantastic Four, although I like some others a lot as well. She's also, as you find out here, of course, my favorite current woman in Marvel in general, because I just find her to be a character that I agree with what she usually does, like motivation-wise, and her choices and stuff always seem to be pure, or at least good, and she tries to do what she thinks is right, even when she has to oppose family members or others to do so, and I really admire that a lot in a character. She's kind of sort of like Captain America in that way, in my opinion. But also, I think her powers are very good for protecting people, and also very powerful as well. Of course, the force fields are super powerful and super useful. I really like her a lot. In general, too, I think her personality, like I said, is a big part of why I like her so much. I also think her as a member of a team, or even her by herself, is just a good character that can work in general. And I always really like to read stories with her in it, and she's a big part of that for sure. I'm Alex the Blue. Thank you guys so much for watching. See you later.